this off to be respectful of your time. My name is Kate Clark. I'm the Executive Director for the National Field Hockey Coaches Association. We are excited to co-host with our friends Andrew and Kirstin from the Pitch Session Pod, which they'll share more about. If you're not a fan, become one. It's easy to. But Broadcaster's Guide, Field Hockey 101, really just breaking down the basics of the rules. And so Kirstin, these two are no strangers to the game. Kirstin has done just about everything in field hockey, from being a Division I athlete to a coach. She also has been an umpire, a commentator, and she's also spent time working with the NFHCA. She is now co-host of the Pitch Session with Andrew Bashuk. I hope I said his name right. So these two will lead you through. Andrew is no stranger to the sports world and field hockey as well. He's a sports administrator and marketing whiz, has filled marketing and game ops role at multiple D1 schools, and served as the voice of George Mason University baseball. These two are the co-hosts of the Pitch Session, and I'm going to turn it over to them. Thank you, Andrew and Kirstin.
Thank you, Kate, for the introduction. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're really excited. We designed this webinar and worked with NFHCA to come up with something that hopefully anybody who's calling games for field hockey this fall, we want this to just give you some confidence to talk to the spectators and feel really engaged in the sport. I know everybody's coming from different areas or probably different sports, and field hockey can feel a little bit intimidating. So we're hoping that this webinar will make it less intimidating and make you really confident going into the fall. So welcome.
You got Kirstin and I come from opposite backgrounds with field hockey. She grew up in the game. She's from Pennsylvania, the cradle of field hockey in this country. And I'm from the South, where there's no field hockey, and I was a baseball, football, basketball guy. So we bring both perspectives. So if you're someone who has been voluntold into calling field hockey, we can help with that. Or if you've been around it your whole life, we've got both versions of that between the two of us.
If you were voluntold, we're looking forward to field hockey becoming your new favorite sport. Which is what happened to Andrew. Yes, let's get into it.
So we did who we are. We can skip that, I think.
We could skip that, although we have some great pictures that everybody's just going to love.
We do. But what we're going to go over, we'll talk about who we are. We already did that, but we'll share some pictures in a minute. We're going to go over the game format for NCAA field hockey, the personnel on the field, what the field of play, what the turf, what the markings on there mean, some very basic skills and terms to use to describe those skills, the rules of the game, penalty corners, which is one of the biggest things that people perhaps get tripped up on or don't understand, that happens a lot. 11 things that set field hockey apart from similar sports such as lacrosse, soccer, or ice hockey that it often gets confused with. A couple do's and don'ts when broadcasting, and then any questions y'all might have. And we ask that you save questions till the end unless you really don't want to, or it's relevant to what we're discussing in that moment, and go ahead and drop it in the chat. So here we are.
Here we are. So like Andrew said, we both came to the game in really different ways. And you can see in that far left picture, maybe that was one of the first times Andrew picked up a stick. But when we met at American University, he caught the bug because he was voluntold to cover the sport and came to love it. And since then, it's taken both of us, but mostly Andrew, all over the world to a bunch of different competitions. Maybe the first time you went abroad, we went to the Junior World Cup in Mönchengladbach, Germany. And then you can see we got to go to Paris for the Olympics last year. And we also got to go to Ann Arbor for the Final Four last year. So it's really hard to say which city was better, both up there in world-class cities, Ann Arbor and Paris.
We consider Ann Arbor the Paris of Michigan. So
we do. So visit. Lovely, lovely place. Yeah. So we are the Pitch Session podcast, and we're co-hosting this with the National Field Hockey Coaches Association. So our podcast, we expect you all to have already followed us on social media and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But we put out our show weekly during the field hockey season and mostly cover Division I. We also have the D3 short corner that gets extended every week. And then obviously the National Field Hockey Coaches Association, it's in the name. They support and are the representation of the field hockey coaches in the country, but they put out the coaches polls and then all of the big awards that you all are aware of or cover during the season. They have a really great web page that is set up just for you all. So it's nfhca.org/SID help. So everything that's relevant to your role is on that page, as is a broadcaster toolkit that we put together. It's 3 pages of just short, quick reference information that you can review before games. Hopefully that will help. We also have some little bots that show the different calls. So hopefully that's a good quick reference for you. And if you have any questions for the NFHCA throughout the season, that email address, they will do their best to answer your questions. So, and Kate is in the chat reminding everybody that this session will be recorded and it'll be posted on that page so you can go back and reference it or share it with your friends. Yeah. So let's get into it.
So the game format, this is the case for NCAA. International is similar, but has a few differences. So we're going to stick with what we're doing here. It's a 60-minute game. It's 4 15-minute quarters. There are 2-minute breaks between the first and second quarter and the third and fourth quarter, plus a 10-minute halftime between the second and third. NCAA field hockey is, all field hockey is 11 on 11. If a game is tied after 60 minutes, there's up to 2 10-minute overtimes. There's sudden victory. We're not allowed to say sudden death. So first goal wins. And the biggest change from regulation play is 4 players are removed from each team. It's 7 on 7. The idea there is to open up the field and encourage scoring. Often it actually does the opposite and it turns into a slog. Because you have these athletes who have been, running for 60 minutes, and now they have to cover the same amount of field with, almost a third less players. And so you do see a good percentage of games that go to overtime that do not get goals in either 20-minute period, either 10-minute period. And if it's still tied after 80 minutes, we go to shootouts. The shootout is similar to what you'll see in international soccer. 5 shooters, a team chooses any 5 players they want. They do not have to have been in the game. It can be a goalkeeper. Some people specialize in this. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if there's a winner after 5, or once someone's ahead enough that they can't be caught, up 3-0 after 3, it's over. If it's still tied after 5 shooters, you have the first shooter for each team goes again, and it's 1-1, 1-1 until someone scores and someone doesn't. If you go through 5 again, you start over for a third time, and we'll go on until one team scores and the other doesn't to end the shootout. So no ties in NCAA field hockey in regular season or postseason play.
And I will add that in the shootouts in that third round, that is, it's rare to get there, but that is when the same player can keep going over and over and over again. So the first 2 rounds, they have to run through the same personnel, but in that third round, they can have the same person repeat. The other thing about the NCAA game format is substitutions are rolling. So there's no stoppage of time when substitutions are happening. The players needs to exit the field before the next one goes in, except for goalkeepers. Goalkeepers, time has to stop for them to substitute. The clock also stops for goals, and it gets stopped when penalty corners are called. And then the other, what's that?
When they assign a card.
And when they assign a card. So those are times that the table really needs to pay attention to stop the clock. And then the other thing that we will talk about a little bit later, penalty corners, but penalty corners and time is really important for you all, because I think this trips some people up when penalty corners are called and time has expired. So if a penalty corner is called and there's 5 seconds left on the clock, the penalty corner must be completed before the game ends or the period ends. So if you hear the horn go off in the middle of the penalty corner, the players or the umpires are not going to react, because the time will not expire until the penalty corner is completed, which is completed if the ball exits the field or there's a goal, or exits the hash mark, which we will talk about later. But that penalty corner can keep repeating, and time will keep going until it's finished. And yes, clock stops with injuries as well. All right. So personnel, we wanted to cover sort of how the field's laid out. So in the front three, so this is sort of the formation that is in vogue right now. This is what you'll see from 90% of college teams. Front three, we call them strikers or forwards. They're there in the yellow. And I mean, that's it. Three is sort of the number we've settled on for many years. In the orange, we have midfielders. We call them middies. A lot of teams are using 4 midfielders, and they're in this diamond formation. Some people will have it more in a bowl, but if it's in this diamond formation, you usually call it attacking or a high midi, and a defensive or a low midi for those players in the middle. And then the blue is defenders or backs. And so you also have a 3-person formation here, but a lot of teams will also transition into a 4-person formation, which we call a bowl. And it is what it sounds like. And usually that defensive midi is the one that kind of comes back. When there are 2 in the back, we call them full backs. And on the side, they're side backs. But again, this is kind of the layout that is what most teams are playing in. And obviously in the pink is the goalkeeper. And so in NCAA field hockey and kind of across the sport, your strongest players will be in that spine. So anybody who's in those center positions tend to be the strongest players on the team. And then for just the nature with the way that we hold our sticks, because we attack with our sticks on the right side, the players on the right side will usually be more attacking oriented. They'll be faster players. And then the people on the left can be more defensive and have better defensive skills. So that's just kind of the nature of the way that the ball is played, how the positions line up. And then, yeah, so this is what what all the field hockey players look like, but we just wanted to show you. So goalkeepers, all those pads, we call them pads, kickers, and then field players, everybody wears shin guards. You can see the stick there as an example of they can only play on the flat side of their stick, which we will talk about a little bit later. But yeah,
so
quick
all
example.
sticks are right-handed. We'll get to that in a minute. That's one of the quirks of the sport, is even if you're left-handed, you have to play with a right-handed stick.
And I will say that there are a few teams that have some left-handed players, but it's the same stick. They literally just flip it in their hands, but same rules apply. They can only use the flat side of their stick. And so I think Northwestern's had a couple of those players. Michigan's have a couple of those players. They're rare, but showing up a little bit more. Same stick, just kind of flipped into the opposite hand.
If you're familiar with baseball, it's like having a left-handed shortstop or left-handed catcher. It doesn't really exist, but there are some unicorns out there, and it's not against the rules, but it's very difficult.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So the stick is exactly the same. So everybody, 99.9% of players play with their left hand at the top of the stick. So lefties put their right hand at the top of the stick. And actually, like, the hook of the stick will point differently. But yeah, same equipment. And yeah, great. Yes, called the blocker. Thank you, Eddie. So it's called the blocker like in ice hockey, and they all hold their sticks in their right hand. And I mean, as we're talking about field hockey, we will also add that field hockey goalkeepers, unlike ice hockey goalkeepers, cannot cover the ball. So that is a big difference between the two sports.
Right. So again, in ice hockey, the goalie can cover the puck and it's a face-off, to their left or right. In field hockey, that is illegal and it results in a corner. So,
yep. Or a stroke, who knows?
Oh, yeah.
We never know. We also wanted to, nobody knows what, yeah. We also wanted to just talk about kind of coaches on the sideline. So it really varies from division to also just funding. So most Division I programs will have 3 coaches on the sideline, head coach to assistants. Coaches are really responsible for one-on-one feedback with players. They're also, one of their big roles is calling penalty corners, and we'll talk about that later, but just those set pieces and sort of reading the play. And then they'll also manage the rolling substitutions. In the ACC and Big Ten, you'll see teams that travel with a strength and conditioning coach. And those coaches will also monitor biometric data, GPS data, and help with rolling substitutions. But then as you get down into the programs that maybe have less funding or travel with less staff, that falls to usually the assistant coaches, or they're not even really tracking it until after the game. And then we've got the umpires. So this visual here shows how the field is divided for umpires and who's responsible for what. So in field hockey, the umpires do everything. It's not like there are no line judges or somebody making a call. They do it all. And each umpire is in charge of a circle and then half of the field. And so when the play is sort of in the middle, wherever the play is attacking toward, whoever the play is coming toward, they're going to be the ones making the call. Across all divisions and in high school now, all umpires are mic'd up. So they're always kind of talking and communicating, but it will be rare to see one umpire make a call in somebody else's zone. They'll usually be giving feedback. And yeah, how they split the field. So the other thing that we wanted to cover that is becoming more and more relevant in Division I is video review. So we're seeing it a lot. And what's important to know is that there are two kinds of video review. So there's a team video review and there's an umpire video review. Teams get one video review per game. If you get the call, you keep the video review. If you don't get the call, you lose it. And so it's really relevant as you're watching the game. You'll see the umpire do the signal where they draw the box. And if they make a T with their hands, it means it's a team video review. If they put their hands on their chest, it's an umpire video review. So teams get one, umpires get unlimited.
And
the other important, and they use
them.
And they use them because we want to get the call right. And the other thing that's really important with video review is what is reviewable. So the only calls that are reviewable are below the 25. So anything in the, between the 25s is not reviewable. And then it has to result in a penalty corner, a stroke, or a goal. So if there is a foul outside of the circle that would not result in one of those things, it's not reviewable. It can overturn or ask for one of those things: penalty, stroke, corner, or goal. And the other important thing that we're seeing some more is that the call has to come, one, from a player. It cannot come from a coach. And the request has to come immediately. And so that is a vague term, I think, for a lot of people. But we've seen last season a few times players looking to a coach for feedback or discussing it before they ask for the review, and umpires are waving them off because they want the request to come very quickly after the play. The other thing is when the umpires go to the tape, which it could be an iPad on the side of the field, it could be at a quarter mile away. It really varies. But when they go look, if they're watching for the play and they see another call that would result in one of those things, they want to make, the best call based on the information that they have, so they can make other calls other than what the players request. Am I missing anything on that, Andrew? I think that was it.
No, that's it.
All right, we got it all. Video review.
And then
we'll cover strokes in a second. And they are called umpires.
They are umpires.
Thank you, Jay. They're umpires.
Yes. The table, most places you're going to have, whether it's the SID crew, you're going to have the broadcaster sitting at the table. What goes on there? Someone has to monitor substitutions. Like we said, free subbing, but you have to make sure that the player comes off before the new one comes on. Card management, so you could be out for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or your whole life, depending on how egregious the foul is. So you'll have someone there. Your game manager will oversee the time, however long the player has to sit out. And then when you get to postseason, oftentimes you'll have a third umpire, a table umpire, like we see in basketball. And they're there in theory to help out. Generally, they just snap at the coaches who are snapping at the umpires on the field and try and keep the peace. But they're there when you get to postseason generally, but you won't see them in the regular season. They're at most international competitions will have them, but you won't see them unless you're hosting a conference or NCAA tournament game generally. Here is the field of play. These are the lines on the field. Generally, a field hockey field is 100 yards long, just like football. I would not measure it. I don't think they're all exactly right,
No.
but they're close enough. The midfield is the 50. You have the 225s there, but then most importantly is the circle. And we'll get to this a little bit in a minute. Yes, you can reviews can only happen inside either 25. So anything that happens in between the 25s is not reviewable. All scoring has to be initiated inside the circle. That is one of the biggest things that set this sport apart. So again, unlike ice hockey or soccer or lacrosse, you cannot shoot the ball from midfield or the length of the field into the goal. If you do that, it just is like out of bounds over the end line and it's a turnover. So all offense has to originate inside the attacking circle. You have the sideline and the end line, pretty self-explanatory. The hash we will get to on the next slide. No, we won't. It's 16-yard line. Sorry. The 16-yard line is an imaginary line at the top of the circle. That is where when the defense takes over, when the ball is hit over the end line, last put out by the offense, the defense can take over anywhere on that imaginary line that extends from the top of the circle from sideline to sideline.
In line with where the ball has exited the field.
Yes.
Yeah.
The dot there in the middle is the stroke spot. That's where strokes will take place. Strokes are the penalty shot of field hockey, but they are called strokes. They are assigned when there's an egregious foul, generally inside the circle, but I mean, it can be assigned for anything, anywhere. But when something rises above the level of a corner, they can assign a stroke. If a shot is taken in the length of the field but touched by an offensive player in the circle, that's a goal. And that is a strategy, is to maybe not the length of the field, but to be outside of the circle and send the ball into the circle and try and have someone deflect it into the goal is a very common and viable strategy. So as long as the ball is touched by anyone.
An attacker in the circle.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
You're right. That's all good. And then the penalty corner markings here are on either side. So the inner hash is for the defense. That's how wide the defense is allowed to line up. They generally are always going to line up in the cage, and we will get to penalty corners and alignment in a minute.
Attacker means anybody attacking with the ball.
She means any offensive player.
Yeah, any offensive player.
So the inner hash here is for the defense and how wide they can go. But again, you'll almost never see them use all that space. They're all going to line up in the cage. The outer hash is where the corner is inserted from. The corner can be inserted from either outer hash, but similar to what we said about left-handed players, you may go your whole life and only see one or two corners inserted from the left hash your whole life. It does happen, but it's when a team is being tricky. And it's very rare, but it can be inserted from either outer hash. And then this hash here, this one here, closest to the inline, does not matter. That is a vestige of an old rule that is, if you go to a place with new turf, the hash won't be there anymore. But if it's a turf that's been there for several years and hasn't been repainted, you will still see this. Something went wrong. That's not great.
Something went wrong.
I don't know.
We'll go back.
Didn't like the hash.
It's like, what are you talking about?
So no, there's no restriction or restraining line on where players can go, and there's no offsides. We'll get to that in a sec. With the exception on penalty corners, but no, there's no restriction there. So anyone can be anywhere, offense and defense wise. You want to talk about skills?
I'm going to talk about skills. So I will say this QR code here takes you to the NFHCA's website and their new coach toolkit. So there's a bunch of short videos on there where you can kind of see a more visual representation of what these skills are, and they get into some more details. So if you're interested in that, that is there and accessible and easy. But these are sort of the terms that we use for all the skills that the players use on the field. So ball control skills, anytime you're carrying the ball, we call it a dribble. Any elimination skill, we call it a lift when they lift a ball in the air a little bit, dodge or a pull. And then a reception, we call it a reception or a trap. Passing skills, you have a hit, a push, and a sweep are your sort of bread and butter skills. Hit, hands are together. Bigger skill, has a backswing. Push, hands are apart, sort of a shorter skill. And then sweep is a skill that you'll usually only see on a flat water-based AstroTurf. So this is a skill used more at the Division I level because of the surface, but that's hands together and you have a backswing across the turf. The skill we see a lot more now is called an overhead. So some of you may have seen it when you were commentating the last few seasons. So that's a pass that goes over the head and usually should cover kind of 10, 15 to 25 yards over the head of players. So this is a skill that more people are using, but umpires really have to manage for danger. So if anybody's too close when they do the skill, that's dangerous. As the ball's coming down, the umpires are really managing that for danger as well. We probably won't cover it a ton in the rules, but generally for overheads as the ball's coming down, you need to be given, if I'm the receiver, I need to be given space and time to receive it safely. So if anybody encroaches, you'll hear a whistle. If it's coming down between two players, the umpire will call it in the air. They should call it in the air, and it will be awarded to the defending players, whoever's on the defensive side of the ball. Or I guess whoever threw it, the other team will be awarded the ball. Shooting skills, these are basically just bigger passing skills. So a hit can be a shot. We also see a lot more now, and especially at the Division I level, the reverse chip. Some people call it the tomahawk. So that's when sticks on the other side of your body, and it's sort of that blade style shot. And a lot of times ball gets lifted in the air. And then, as Andrew talked a little bit about earlier, tips and deflections are important shooting skills. And then a flick, which is an elevated push. So that's when they're trying to push the ball up in the air and get the goalkeeper to make a hand save. Defensive skills, we call them tackles. They can be block tackles or jab tackles. And marking is similar to other sports, so player to player or zone marking. Goalkeeping skills, we call them saves, and you can call it a lunge, kick, or clear. And they, of course, make hand saves. And then some of these specialty skills. So field hockey is a sport where there are a lot of like specialty skills, and with set pieces like penalty corners, players will develop these skills so that, they can get on the field. But so inserting is a specialty skill that somebody works on, as is a stick stop, which we'll talk about in a minute, and one that you'll be seeing a lot more. So this is really prolific at the international level, and it's starting to trickle down more into Division I. A drag flick is a really challenging skill, but essentially on a penalty corner, it is a really powerful flick that can go, it's supposed to be accurate and fast, so it can go up in the air, it can stay down on the ground. But you'll only maybe see, a lot of teams will try it, but there are only going to be maybe like 10 teams that have somebody who's really adept, is that right? Adept at it at the Division I level. And then again, so a penalty stroke, when somebody takes that, that's a skill that there are a lot of people who specialize in that. And so you can have players that will come off the bench to take a penalty stroke. So the player who the penalty stroke is awarded for is not the person who has to take it. Anybody can take it. And then shootout, that's another specialty skill that people really practice. That's probably something people will practice, if not every day at practice, at least once a week. And they definitely have a rotation of people that specialize in that.
Just like penalty kicks in soccer. And yes, an overhead is also an aerial. They're the same thing.
Yep.
So some of the rules of the game, the main thing to take away here, the big rule, if there's only one thing you leave us with today, it's this. The ball can only be played off the stick. So you cannot use your body. If the ball touches any part of your body, whether on purpose or not, it is a foul. So people yell foot. Generally, feet is where the ball touches, but it cannot be your body. It cannot be your arm, your leg, anywhere. So it is against the rules if the ball touches any part of any player's body. However, and this is the thing that trips people up, the call is not always made. One of the things that the umpires do in an attempt to keep the flow going, and believe it or not, the flow could be worse, is what's called advantage. And so if stopping the game due to a foul, due to a defensive player having the ball touch them on their body would hinder the offense, the referee will not make the call. They will swallow their whistle and let the game continue. Generally, you will hear them say play on, or they will motion with their arms and hands that they saw the illegal play, they saw the foul, and are choosing to let it go to give the advantage to the offense. So they're saying, I didn't miss it. I saw it and chose not to stop the game. So sometimes you'll be watching, if you're new to the sport and you figured out, okay, can't use your foot, you'll see it hit a defender's foot and you'll be like, oh my God, he or she missed it. They didn't miss it. They decided that by stopping the game, it would hinder the offense. So anything else on that, Kira?
No, you got it.
Okay.
Well put.
Yes, well, thank you. A few of the other rules here, they're mostly all versions of obstruction. The play on signal is generally going to be they're going to take their arm out like this and say play on, or point towards the way the offense is going, keep going. So it's going to depend on where the umpire is relative to the play. If they're right in there, they'll take their whistle out of their mouth and say play on. If they're further from the play, they may use the arm signal. They may do both. It all depends on the flow of the action. So the top three on here, you can't obstruct. Back stick, we talked about that. You can only use the flat side of the stick. If you use the curved back side of the stick, that's a foul and an immediate stopping of play and a turnover. Danger, Kirstin discussed that with the overheads, but any play that is here, you want to answer that?
Yeah, so yes, there is no obstruction allowed. Shielding, I mean, we're getting into the nuance of it right now, but you can shield the ball as long as the ball is moving. So if I stop the ball and I turn my body, that's obstruction. But if I move with the ball and I kind of shield with my body, that's up to the sort of umpire's discretion, but that will be more allowed. So some of this is a little bit more nuanced.
The metaphor I would make with the shielding is it's holding in football. They could call holding on every play, but they have to decide, was it egregious enough that it impeded the player and they need to blow their whistle. So it's nuanced, but you can't do it.
And when it comes to advantage, there's no required motion from the umpire. So this will vary. I mean, sometimes they won't do anything because you can tell like the players know and the umpire knows it's just continuing because we're all aware of what's happening. Sometimes they'll just put their arm up. Sometimes they'll say play on. But if the advantage is happening, and so sometimes you'll see them give advantage and then something else will happen, they'll blow their whistle to bring it back. But like there's no requirement of like how they explain advantage. It's just kind of hands up. Sometimes they'll say something.
Yeah.
So Jay's asking if a pass happens and I'm on defense, I have to give room for the offensive player to receive it. No. So like you can contest space. It's just when I'm the ball carrier, I cannot turn my body so that a defender cannot come to get the ball. If I'm on defense, I can't put my stick in and like hit somebody else's stick to stop them from playing the ball. So I think the more you watch it, the more you'll kind of get it. But essentially, or I'm trying to think, like, is charging a thing in basketball? Is that relevant? Like, you can't come into the play to stop the play.
Yeah.
But you'll see these signals of the game too that are not fouls, but sort of things that are awarded. Do you want to go, Andrew?
Of the signals? Yeah. So 16-yard hit, we talked about that. That's when the offense sends the ball over the end line and the defense takes over on that imaginary line that stretches across the top of the circle. Long corner is the opposite. That's when the defense sends it over their own end line. And that's where the offense will restart the play. Side in, free hit, advantage. That's, again, anytime the ball needs to be put back into play. Penalty corner, we're about to get to in depth. Penalty stroke, again, is when something happens where a corner is not enough. When it's more egregious, you get a penalty stroke, and a goal, obviously, is when the ball goes in the cage.
And so the penalty stroke, I'll just add that it is when there's an intentional foul to stop a sure goal or a legitimate shot on goal. So if somebody is the last line of defense and they use their foot to deny the ball or deny the goal, a really egregious foul to stop a shot, that will be a penalty stroke. And then goal, like I would say make sure as a commentator or broadcaster, you're looking to the umpires to actually signal they go back to the 50, calling a goal, because there are a lot of times and reasons why a goal might be overturned. So we always have like premature celebrations. Look to the umpire.
For the question about when the shot has to stay low, we're gonna do that right now. That's on penalty corners.
And somebody asked about the long corner signal. So they're all the same. So side in, free hit, advantage, they're all like this. Penalty corner, you'll see the umpire start like this and they'll sweep their hand up to basically say, bring the ball up to the 25. So that'll be the difference. But whenever it goes over the end line, you're basically looking for them to go like this or do this signal where they sweep their hand. So either two arms out or sweeping their hand up to the 25. All right, so penalty corners. Here we go, everybody buckle up. So we'll start with the attack penalty corner. So we call this the attacking unit or APC, attack penalty corner. The personnel and what's relevant to what you all will be talking about are batteries. So the people who are a stick stopper, who you see the player on the left, and a hitter or a flicker player on the right there, that they make up what's called a battery or a castle. Teams will either have one or two of them. It really is determined based on their personnel and their preference. In addition to those batteries, you have other players along the edge of the circle that go in for deflections, tips. They might just be a shield, or they can stay at the top of the circle for a pass. So on these attack penalty corners, there's a lot of creativity. A lot of scouting happens. Teams practice penalty corners probably every single practice. And if coaches are scouting a team, if they don't have a lot of time, they will 100%, the only thing they will look at is penalty corners. So it's very strategic. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. So as it begins, you can see down there on the little right side, there's the pink dot is an inserter. The play cannot start until the inserter brings the ball into play. So as soon as they bring the ball in, that's where all of the movement happens. And they'll be inserting it up to one of the batteries. And then that's when all of the changes occur. And I think that's it. So you'll see, so we put it on the screen too. You know, it's harder to read because positions change, but generally, if you're looking at the cage, players on the left, we call them L1s or L2s. Players on the right are R1s or R2s. And then the opposite side, so defensive unit or the defensive penalty corner, DPC. In a defensive penalty corner, a maximum of 5 players can start inside the cage. 9 times out of 10, 99.9% of the time, it is going to be 1 goalkeeper and 4 field players. There are instances, if anybody breaks the line before the inserter brings the ball into play, you will have to, the umpire will send a player back. So you would see reset of the corner, 1 player goes back. There are then only 3 players, 1 goalkeeper. If they break again, 1 player goes back. We reset 2 field players, 1 goalkeeper, and it happens. The players in the cage now, they all must wear masks, but based on preference, some teams will put big gloves on or knee pads, but none of that is required at the moment. So you can see here the 4 players in. The first player that you always see running out really, really hard, we call her the flyer. They're very brave. Their job is to disrupt the shot and read the play. So they're always streaking to the top of the circle. The 2 players that hang back a little bit, we call those trails or covers. Their job is to sort of disrupt the deflectors, read the play. Goalkeeper is sort of, dare I use a football term, but like the quarterback of the defensive penalty corner unit. They'll sort of read the play. They'll be the one kind of directing the players in the cage before the corner starts. They read the, read the shot, make the save. And then the player that holds back and sort of protects any weak spots for the goalkeeper is called the post player. So there's the defensive penalty corner. All right. And then so timing the penalty corner, as soon as it's called, time stops, and both units have 20 seconds to get ready. So that will start, the umpire will hurry them along, and then the umpire whistles, and the play begins when the inserter inserts the ball. So time restarts when the umpire whistles, but nobody can enter the field until the inserter inserts the ball. And then, you know, like the strategy here, is, I mean, it varies. They watch a lot of scouting. You'll see coaches with binders where they will show pictures or call out numbers that are relevant to whatever play they're calling. And the really important thing to understand is that penalty corner only ends. So this is where the hash mark that we showed you earlier comes into play. Penalty corner only ends when the ball exits the field, like the end line, or it goes outside of the hash mark. So the hash mark is 5 yards away from the circle. If it exits that, penalty corner is over. It also is over when a goal occurs. But penalty corners can repeat. So if, you know, I think we said if somebody breaks early, you lose a player, but the penalty corner doesn't end and another penalty corner is called, you can't bring that player back. That same penalty corner is continuing until one of those things happens. It exits the field, it exits the hash, or there's a goal.
So if a defensive team commits another foul during the penalty corner, if the ball hits a foot, you get another penalty corner. And that's important to remember that if time has expired, as we said earlier, you get to complete the penalty corner. It's like the concept of an untimed down in football. So if if the defense commits a penalty on the last play of a football half, you get an untimed down. If they commit another penalty, you get another untimed down. So the play will continue until it's either a goal or the ball goes over the end line or beyond the hash.
Yeah, and good question from Dave, which I don't think we said. A penalty corner is called when any of the fouls that we talked about, any foul at all, happens inside of the shooting circle. So if a foul happens inside of the shooting circle, it's automatically against the defense, it's automatically a penalty corner. You will also see instances of a really egregious foul outside of the circle. We call it's being upgraded to a penalty corner. So it's like bad enough that they're gonna award it and upgrade it to be a penalty corner. So that's really important. Any foul inside of the circle. And how many do we see on average in a game? This varies, but you can look at box scores. I mean, sometimes
Anywhere from
3
to 12, and it's kind of like shots on goal. You'll see one team dominates the other, and one team earned 12, 15, 18 corners in a game, and the team that got crushed didn't get any or got one. So but in an even game, anywhere from 3 to 5 to 8. What is about 1 in 3? We actually did a study on it. Was that last year or the year before? And we found out that there actually was not much of a correlation between penalty corner conversion percentage and winning percentage. But
yeah, if you listen to pitch session, you'll see this is a gripe of ours because
so much time and attention is paid to these, and
I don't know if it pays off all the time. Yeah, so conversion rate really varies, but it's not huge.
Yeah, you want to aim for about 33 to 40% on offense is good. So the thing about the height of the ball we haven't mentioned. So for safety during a penalty corner, the offense cannot ever send the ball higher than the board in the back of the cage, which is 10 inches?
18 inches.
18 inches. At no point during the corner can the ball be higher than 18 inches. If it is, I know about a draft flick. If it is,
I was about to correct
I'll
him.
get to it, I promise. It's a turnover. So one of the things that trips people up is you will see someone take a shot from the top of the corner and maybe it goes in but hits the net and not the board. That is no goal. That is a foul and a violation and a turnover. Or maybe it hits the board, but it had an arc. And so at some point on its journey to the cage, it went higher than 18 inches. They will wave it off. And so you'll see an exciting shot go in, maybe hit the board, maybe not. Crowd cheers, and you'll see the defensive team come out and take a hit at the 16-yard, and you'll be like, what happened? The ball went in. 99 times out of 100, that's because at some point on its journey to the cage, it went too high. The only exception to that rule are drag flicks. So a drag flick, which is what Kirstin talked about in the offensive skills, you generally only see it at the international level, but the skill is slowly making its way into college field hockey. A drag flick can go as high as, there's no limit on how high it can be. So that is the exception to the rule. So again, maybe someone drag flicks it, it goes into the top corner of the cage, and it's a goal, and you've just figured out, well, that can't be a goal because it was higher than the board, but it is. The height of the ball is not review. I don't know. Kira?
And the important distinction is if there is a backswing, it has to stay below 18 inches when it crosses the plane of the goal. It also, when I hit it, so when I have a backswing, it has to stay below that thing. But Suzanne brought it up, deflections are a thing. So if when the hit goes and it's flat, legal, deflection goes into the goal, legal. So it's so that's really important. And the difference is backswing has to stay below 18 inches. The shot has to stay below 18 inches. No backswing can go anywhere. And the height of the ball is reviewable. That is because it results in a goal, so it's reviewable. And this is an area where teams may call it, but if they're out of reviews, this is something an umpire would likely review, because there's just a lot going on in front of the cage. Yeah, and a drag flick is when it's a hard push, no backswing, as a shot.
If you want to see, drag flicks are actually a great thing to drop into YouTube. If you look at international, especially men's, but women's too, if you just want to see some wild drag flicks, you throw that into YouTube and you'll see just
In the YouTube.
yeah, awesome examples of it.
And yeah, somebody brings up a good point, like wrist shot, slap shot. So like those are very old school
That
skills.
doesn't
That does
really-
not happen anymore. If you say slap shot and somebody who knows field hockey is listening to your broadcast, they'll automatically be like, oh my God, these people don't know anything, because we don't do that anymore. That's really a skill that has gone the way of the dodo. We don't use those anymore.
The height
Thank
of the
you,
ball,
Jorge.
the height of the ball, the 18-inch rule only applies to penalty corners, but the height of the ball does matter in that you can't do something that the umpire deems dangerous.
Yep.
So that's not directly, it's not directly correlated. And yeah, I understand what you were asking. It's the problem is it's not a perfect metaphor or analogy because the field hockey swing isn't quite the same. But yes, a drag flick is kind of like a wrist shot, but it's not. So the metaphor doesn't work great.
Yeah, you won't really see anybody doing sort of a wrist shot with a backswing. Doesn't really happen.
So penalty corners are a big bugaboo. Obviously, they get so much attention from the sport. There you go, learn to drag flick. I should probably do that. But at the end of the day, I mean, they matter, kind of like a power play in ice hockey. We're going to get to in a minute. Don't call them power plays. But they matter, but they don't matter more than anything else. So here's 11 things that set field hockey apart. The first one here, and if anyone can guess what all these mean without being explained, you win the award.
Andrew still can't.
No, I have notes because I can't remember. The first one is the circle. All scoring has to be from inside the circle. So just remember that. You can start the ball outside the circle and deflect it, but so sometimes you'll see a ball come from midfield and the goalkeeper will just watch it go into their cage. That's because they know it originated from outside the circle and it's a turnover. The second one here, got to use the flat side of the stick. It's not an ice hockey stick. You can't use both sides. Third one, no offsides.
Everybody can go anywhere.
So the person who deflects it does get credit for the goal. The person who shot it, it's an assist. And if you are an SID, I will tell you that catching deflections is one of the most difficult things to do. Who deflected it? Was it deflected? At all levels, I've worked the Final Four in the national championship game where we've had to ask a coach on the sideline, hey, who deflected that? Because the coach will know, but sometimes it happens real fast. And so if you're having to assign a goal and you think there is a deflection, there's nothing wrong with grabbing, an assistant at an appropriate time. And hey, was that goal deflected? So, but yes, the deflector gets credit for the goal and the shooter gets an assist. And there are 2 assists, like ice hockey. You can go up to 2.
Especially on penalty corners.
Yes, on penalty corner, the inserter, if it's a straight shot, inserted, stopped, and then shot in, the inserter and the stick stopper get assists.
This is the only way I got on a stat sheet when I was in college. So free hits, they are free hits in field hockey. They aren't throw-ins or free kicks or whatever other terminology you might use. They're free hits in field hockey. When we start the game or a quarter, we call them pushbacks. But that's really a term that we're carrying over from sort of old school, because now you will see in the era of self starts, people can start a free hit with a dribble. So you'll see somebody start the game and just dribble forward or throw an overhead. So it's called a push back, but a lot of teams go forward now. Obviously, we talked a lot about penalty corners, and it's something that really sets the game apart. And it's really dynamic and exciting for spectators. So it's something very special and unique to field hockey.
Then next we have the official blowing their whistle here. That's just a reminder about advantage. Just because there's a foul, they may not blow their whistle if it would benefit the offense to let them play. The line is in for the ball to be considered out on a sideline, an in line, or the goal line. The ball has to go completely over the line. So any part of the line the ball is still in play. And then our somersaulting friend here is rolling substitutions, which we talked about. So the game does not stop for subs except for the goalkeeper.
And I'll also remind everybody that when the line is in, bodies can leave the field. So you can see players actually like step off the field, but as long as the ball isn't still in, that doesn't change anything. Penalty strokes are really unique to field hockey. And again, we covered those, but you'll see that signal. And then the last thing are cards. So cards in field hockey have consequences. A green card is a 2-minute suspension, and a team will play down a player. And these are really common. You'll see these several times through. You might see 0, but you'll probably see a couple in every game. This is usually for a hard foul, being too close on a free hit, or encroaching multiple times on an overhead. Yellow cards are more serious. These are for more dangerous or egregious fouls. This is the umpire's discretion to send a player off for anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. So after they award the card, they will use their hands to show how many minutes they want the player off. Most 95% of them will be 5 minutes. They'll elevate it if it's really egregious. And then red cards, super rare, but they happen. And that is elimination from the game. Team plays down a player, and the player or coach needs to exit the field. And I believe they also cannot play in the next
They
game.
if you get ejected, you miss the next game.
Um,
It's advantage. You can say 11 on 10. You can say man advantage, player advantage. Just not power play.
And yes, PC is an acceptable term for penalty corner. If you say PC or corner, all acceptable.
PC is PC.
PC. You can say penalty corner or PC. PC
I'm
is
saying
PC. I got it.
Political correct. Yeah.
As I was talking, I realized it was a joke.
Yeah.
And yes, if a card is issued to a player, the coach stays. So the coach only leaves if the red card is issued to a coach. And fun fact for everybody on the webinar, coaches can only get green cards or red cards. So you get one green card, the next card that's coming is a red. They do not get yellows. And a green card for a coach is just a warning.
Yes, all cards result in a player coming off. So 2 minutes on the green card, generally 5 minutes on the yellow, and red, your day is over.
Yep. All right.
And then lastly, just a few do's and don'ts here. One, don't make calls for the umpire. The game happens fast, and just like every sport, you may be right, you may be not, but it's not benefiting anybody. Let the action play out. That really comes to pass with advantage a lot. You'll see someone new broadcasting the game, and they finally understand the rules, and they'll yell, "That was a foot, blow the whistle." And there's again a reason the whistle wasn't blown. Don't explain every whistle. Believe it or not, sometimes nobody knows. There's a lot of whistles in this game. Generally, it's for some sort of dangerous play, an obstruction, or a foul. Again, maybe the ball clipped someone's arm, clipped their foot, whatever it is. If you try and explain every whistle, you're never going to get into the flow of your broadcast. Avoid crossover terms, like we said, power play, anything ice hockey related, anything, penalty shot, like we said with soccer. And we try not to compare to other sports.
And I will say that's just a personal preference. Field hockey is really unique. We're also really trying to establish ourselves in the psyche of all of the spectators. So as a personal favor, like make field hockey unique and special. Comparing it usually doesn't help us in the way that maybe it's intended to. So that's just Jay, I'm on it. Jay's asking what happens if a goalie gets a card, and I know it deep in my brain, but I'm looking at it on the rule book. I will get back to you.
You get another player comes out.
Yes, I think so. Another player comes out, unless it's obviously like a red card.
Yeah.
But then I think you get to it's a field player comes out, and I think you can replace the
Yeah,
goalkeeper.
you can replace the field player comes off.
Yeah. So we've got a few extra
I
minutes.
think the other team gets to choose who comes off.
No, that is not the rule.
I think okay.
And yes, I will drop or maybe Kate can drop it in the chat, but the nfhca.org/SID help page will have the recording of this webinar. It also has the toolkit we created, which is a lot of this information just distilled down into like 2 or 3 pages. And yeah, so if anybody, is there a good place to get an NCAA rule book? Well, USA Field Hockey gives these bad boys out, but they apply the international rules, and then there are NCAA modifications that are addendums to this, and I believe you can find those on the NCAA website. And they will explain a little bit more about overtime, uniforms, and shootouts. And I will add, like, overtimes are a totally American thing. They do not do this internationally. The overtime players down is very, very foreign to all of the international players that come here. We're the only country that does it.
It's actually kind of amazing. You'll have an international player, and they'll be here for their freshman year, first year, and their first game will be tied after 60 minutes, and they'll start walking off the field. Like, sometimes they have no idea that there's overtime, because international field hockey, unless it's the knockout round of a tournament, you play 60 minutes, you call it a day, and it's a tie.
Yeah, and instead of calling it a power play, we'll call like numbers up. A player advantage is what we would call it.
Field or pitch, either one is fine. Sometimes just the turf also. In any of that's fine. Time is stopped for an extra. No, time is not stopped on subs. Time is stopped if there's a goalkeeper change. You have to tell the umpire, and they'll stop the game.
And that's something you might see this season. So a strategy that's been very in vogue the last few years, if a team's down towards the end of the game, they will sub out the goalkeeper for an additional field player. So kind of a player up situation to score at the end of the game. So you'll see that a lot.
You see that about the 5-yard rule, Kira?
The 5-yard. When is the 5-yard island self starts? Okay. So yeah, so one thing we didn't cover is on a free hit, every defensive player, so the player on the defending team, has to be 5 yards away. And because restarts happen so fast, free hits and restarts happen so fast, they may be within the 5 yards, but if they just stand there and they don't make a motion or any action to get towards the ball, the umpire will let it go. So you might see players try to back away, or they'll just stand up with their hands up, or they'll just stand there. As long as you don't actually attempt to influence the play, that 5-yard rule will be allowed.
And that's an attempt to improve the flow of the game.
Yes. And the only time, so the defensive team always has to be 5 yards away. When the play is within the 25-yard line, everybody's got to be 5 yards away. So that is a little nuance.
A nugget.
A little nugget. Special for everybody on the webinar. Yeah, tie in the last 3 minutes with the extra field player, send it to overtime. It's effective. Like, it happens a lot. And because you'll see the formation, like, it'll usually, when they pull the goalkeeper, they'll add a 4th striker, which then just really baffles the defense. It's just like another person for them to cover. So it really changes the numbers.
And remember, it's potentially less risky than ice hockey, because you can't score, you can't send it down the length of the field and score. Even without the goalkeeper, the ball still has to be played from inside the circle. So whereas in ice hockey, if you pull your goalie, you can send it the whole length of the ice into the goal. You can't do that. The offense still has to get the ball down the field and into the circle. So that's why it can be a more effective strategy in field hockey than ice hockey.
And yeah, so the hash marks, and I don't know, Andrew, can you pull up the field one
Sure.
again? Um, so first I'll talk about the hash mark. Jay's throwing, and also I've been replying to everybody. I just didn't realize I was only replying to host and panelists. So that's on me. Jay's asking some great questions, making me go to the rule book. So what's the point of the hash? So this is also a little bit of a holdover from how free hits used to be taken inside the 25. But the important part is on a penalty corner, once the ball exits past the hash mark, the penalty corner is dead. So that becomes really relevant when time expires, or like the way that penalty corners are played. So all those rules, right, that we talked about, the ball needs to be below 18 inches, all of those sort of things. If the ball goes all the way out to outside of the hash mark, it's free. Like all the rules are off. So
Chaos.
sometimes, what?
It's chaos once the ball goes
It's
out.
chaos. It is chaos. So you'll see some teams do that. Like let the ball go through the stick stopper all the way to a player back by the hash marks because they want to hit the ball high in the air, or they want to do some tricky thing. Like that's part of the reason for the hash marks being there. The hash marks are also a really good guide for the umpires just to have an idea of sort of how far 5 yards is from the circle. And then what if it's deflected off of a defender in the circle? If the ball, so in order for it to be a goal, it must be touched by an attacker inside the circle. So if it is deflected off of a defender and the ball originated inside of the circle, goal. If it is deflected off of a defender and the ball originated outside of the circle, no goal. And I'll leave it at that because that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can that be reviewed? Yes. Because the result would be a goal.
Good.
Good. We've got a couple, I mean, we're over a little bit, but if people have some more questions, we can hang for 5 more minutes or whatever.
Do we give people time to go subscribe to the podcast? Or you
Oh
think
my God, please
although
put
you
up our
probably already
info.
did.
And somebody asked, this is a good question for SID. So is it always 2 assists? It's 2 assists when it's a straight shot. So there's no deflections, there's no passing. Then it goes to the inserter or the sticks. The assists go to both the inserter and the stick stopper. And yes, that only is relevant for penalty corners. In every other goal, there's only 1 other assist awarded
So-
unless it's for penalty corners.
Right here. The hash mark above the question mark is where long corners used to have to be taken from. It's no longer relevant.
Yep.
And so, or when it's a vestige of turfs that have not been redone since this rule was removed. It does not matter. You can completely disregard this hash mark. And yes, you get 1 point for a goal, 1 point for an assist like ice hockey.
No. 2 points for a
You're
goal.
right. I knew that. I'm sorry. You're right.
1 point for an assist.
You're
I mean,
right.
that's why we're here. We're the
No.
dynamic duo because alone we make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, they're both umpires. The podcast is pitch session. Yes, 2 points for a goal, 1 for an assist when calculating individual statistics. Yes.
Yes. Andrew, do you want to go to our little slide? So everybody can follow the pitch session podcast. We talk about the poll. We talk about the week that's been, the week to come. We're interviewing coaches. We do it all. And then there was one other one that came up. Oh, and who's the umpire based on their position on the field. So the lead umpire will be closer to the bench. And they're called the lead umpire just because when you don't have a table umpire, they'll be the ones kind of taking feedback from coaches and managing cards and kind of watching substitutions. And then you have the trail umpire on the other side of the field. And that term also can kind of interchange if there's a play in the circle. The lead umpire is whoever circle it is, and the trail umpire will be the one up on the other side of the field.
So just to be clear on this point thing, goals in the game are always worth 1. You can't score more than 1 at a time. We're talking about for tracking individual statistics, you get 2 points for a goal, 1 for an assist. For who's leading the team in points or leading their conference in points. But in the actual game, you can only score by 1s. There's no 2-pointers.
Man, wouldn't that be awesome? Maybe in overtime.
Correct. 1 goal, 1 assist, 3 points. That's right.
Exactly.
If anyone wants to help us, Kirstin and I's crusade is that overtime is played with 2 balls. No one in either the NFHCA or USA Field Hockey seems to be helping us, but we are on a crusade to get 2 balls.
They do not yeah, recognize that as a real possibility.
For one day.
But I will say, you're going to hear this prediction first, but I say within 10 years, there will be no more overtime. I think at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, NCAA field hockey will go the way of international field hockey, and we will just skip overtime and go straight to shootouts.
I don't know. We hate ties in this country.
We do hate ties. Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to win. From midfield, 2 points. This guy, Rick's saying we're getting rid of the circle.
It's like, yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
NBA GAM style. You have like a 4-point circle.
We did tie England in the War of 1812. Wow. Yeah, and that's the war nobody talks about, the Forgotten War, because we didn't win, we tied.
Okay, let's stop.
All right. Yes, go follow us. And also, if you guys email us your questions, pitchsessionpodcast@gmail.com, we are happy to answer them.
We are.
Yes, overtime, golden goal, sudden victory. It's over. Thank you all so much. Thanks for broadcasting field hockey and making everybody love it. We're very excited for the
We'll
season.
be in Durham in November. Come visit us.
Yeah, come hang. We will be there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kirstin and Andrew. This has been amazing. The webinar will be available by Monday morning on the SID NFHCA page. We'll also email everyone just to make sure you have the link. So thanks again. We look forward to hearing you all and seeing you all this season.